Hi, everyone. My name is George Shaler, and I'm the State of Maine SAC Director, and we are pleased to be a part of cohort number 2. We were part of cohort number 1 as well, and but we have a new project. And whereas with our first project, we were working with our statewide sexual assault centers organization. This time we are working with one of our domestic violence shelters in the state. So in Maine, we have 2 organizations, one that serves victims of sexual assault, and then we also have an organization that provides domestic violence services. Each of those statewide organizations have regional services across the state of Maine. And in this case, we are working with one of our domestic violence shelters in our capital area, which is Augusta. Augusta, even though it's our capital, is a relatively small city of maybe about 20,000 people, and the domestic violence program that serves that county as well as the county to the northwest is called Somerset County, and we are evaluating Somerset House, which is a shelter in which is in Somerset County. So our presentation is going to sound very similar to the one that you just heard. So that's one of the reasons why Elizabeth asked so many good questions. Is that we'd like to get together with the folks in Iowa and talk shop. Because we are evaluating a rapid rehousing program as well. And a little bit different, but because we're focusing on 2 counties. But just by means of a little background, Somerset House, as the slide here in front of you, is part of the Family Violence Project, which is headquartered in Augusta. Somerset House is a DV shelter, provides a comprehensive array of support for battered women, mostly with addiction. It was established a half dozen years ago, or actually, I'm sorry, 8 years ago. It's a relatively small shelter, serves 4 women and their children at any one time, and it has a total of 11 beds. And a lot of the women and their families who have been at that program can stay for a year or more. What this program is looking at, they provide an array of services, as I mentioned, 24-hour helpline, crisis intervention, and you can see all the other bullets there across the right side of the slide. They too want to, like our colleagues out in Iowa, this is a program that, while they collect a lot of outputs because they have various contracts with other state agencies to provide these services, they have never kind of developed an evaluation framework for their work. And they don't often have a lot of time to reflect on the data that they're gathering and that are being tabulated for them by various agencies at the end of a certain reporting period. So we are going to be working with them. And by the way, I'm so sorry. I forgot to introduce. I just jumped in. Nervous tick on my part. I didn't introduce my colleagues, Elizabeth Snell, who you heard from earlier. My apologies. And Alexa Plotkin, who developed this wonderful slide presentation. And my apologies.
No problem, George.
And so, you know, this is all about developing evaluation capacity in this agency. They do not have a lot of expertise when it comes to evaluation. So we're actually in the process of doing a couple of what we call evaluation seminars with them, where we're going to kind of teach them the basics of evaluation over a couple of, 1 to 2 hour sessions. And then, we will be asking them to do a little homework, if you will, and part of that homework is developing a logic model. And we will be providing them with critique in the construction of their logic model. And we here at the Statistical Analysis Center, which is based at the University of Southern Maine, have a fair amount of expertise in working with community-based organizations in developing evaluation frameworks, including logic models. So that is at the heart of what we will be doing. And then once that that logic model is been completed, we will start to look at the data that they want or that they have selected to be part of their logic model, and to kind of provide them with some feedback and analysis of those data. And again, what we're going to do is we are going to work with them to develop outcomes from which they can readily measure their progress. So we don't want them to go out and have to develop new tools. They're already collecting some data here and there. We want to make use of what they're already gathering right now and just kind of frame it up in a way that kind of can look at various levels of outcomes, from initial to intermediate to long-term outcomes. I also should have mentioned outputs. So that is, and then again, like our colleagues in Iowa, one of the things that we want to be able to do is the women and their children who go through Somerset House can be directed to rapid rehousing and then into more permanent housing. One of the issues that Somerset House is wanting to know is a lot of times when women and their children are moved rapidly into new housing, one of the questions they often have is sometimes they are moved into housing in very rural areas. Somerset County is extremely rural, and it is not near a lot of services, so they can be cut off. You know, it's already a traumatic period of their lives, and then to be kind of further cut off by living in a very rural area. Sometimes they might not have access to transportation. We're trying to assess whether that is if that works all the time for women and their children, because we have the Somerset House has some concerns that maybe some women and their kids are not ready for, you know, being put kind of directed into permanent housing. Did I get that right, Elizabeth?
You did.
Okay, all right. So that's one of the other things that we're going to be looking at. The Family Violence Project uses a database called EmpowerDB. This is a piece of software that our Maine Coalition Against Sexual Assault uses as well. It's being used by all the domestic violence programs and shelters in the state. And it's being used in other states as well. In fact, it was developed by a guy in Massachusetts, as I understand it. We might end up also developing some surveys. We're not sure of that right now. It'll depend on the construction of the logic model and the evaluation framework, and that we also may do some interviews. Again, this is all kind of depending on the direction that Somerset House takes this project. So let's see, next slide. So we will produce a final report that we will also share with our state VOCA administrator. We'll prepare a final presentation for the Family Violence Project as well. And that we also, the Maine SAC has a partner organization here at the University of Southern Maine called our Data Innovation Project. And time permitting, we will look to develop some data dashboards that won't look quite as slick as the ones that Misty and her team are developing, but we hope to kind of move in that direction. So I think that is that it? Let's see. Nope, that's it. I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead. I'm taking the Robin's thunder away. So anyways, that's, project is very, has a lot of similarities to the work being done in Iowa, and anyways, I'll leave it up for questions at this point.
Thank you, George and team. Does anyone have any questions for our Maine team? I'll go ahead and unmute the lines for everybody. All right, so we'll go ahead and move on to our Vermont team, and if anybody thinks of any questions for any of the states, we will have time here at the end.